was wrong to say. I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through color glass, time rolls on enough to let me move on past. But every little now and then it creeps on back to shape my smile.
Vestiges After Dark is a philosophical speculation program sponsored by the Holy Nicolayan Catholic Church, an independent Catholic church inspired by the diversity of early Christianity and in communion with the Old Catholic Church. Presiding Bishop Bryan Ouellette presents perspectives on esotericism, metaphysics, philosophy, psychology, paranormal research, theology, spirituality, religion, and Catholicism. We are not affiliated with the Church of Rome. Our discussions of Catholicism are broader than, and distinct from, the Church of Rome. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individual participants.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, coming to you live from the deep woods of western Georgia on this June 2nd, 2026. Well, if you live in the modern world and you're here in America, then you must be living in a bubble if you haven't been noticing that there's a definite shift in how mainstream media and public officials are now talking about UFOs as though they are actual things. They call that disclosure, and that's tonight on Vestiges After Dark. Well, hello, everybody. Once again, I am your host, Bishop Bryan Ouellette, here with my co-host, Jamie Wolf.
Hello, everybody. Good evening.
We're here tonight to talk to you about alien disclosure, UAP, UFO disclosure, and what that means from a Christian perspective, and what is the most realistic and rational approach that the Christian should have to this subject matter. That's coming up on hour 2. I'll be presenting to you a bit of a discourse on this subject. Slightly authoritative from a bishop's perspective, I guess, but we will have plenty of room for discussion in the third hour. And I'm trying to keep the presentation to about 45 minutes because I'd like to expand the discussion part of this as much as possible. Of course, leaving room for all of your questions that I'm sure you may have. We'll have the call-in number up on the screen in the third hour. We'll be taking calls in the third hour if you want to call into the show, or you can leave your comments, questions, stories in any of the various chats around the internet where we are simulcasting, be that Facebook or YouTube, Instagram or TikTok. We are on all 4 of those platforms live right now, and our moderators are watching for your questions. So by all means, go ahead and ask them, but keep them relevant to tonight's subject matter, which is, of course, on UAPs and UFOs and disclosure, what that means to the Christian. But it's not just for Christians tonight. In fact, this particular episode is launching a theological series, a 3-part series, maybe even more than that. We don't know yet quite how many more there might be. But next week is Open Lines, Open Topics. But after that, the season finale will be on esoteric Christianity interpreted through the lens of a non-dogmatic Catholicism, which the Holy Nicolean Catholic Church is, and that's going to be the season finale episode. And then the first summer special is going to be on the independent sacramental movement and the validity of the sacraments and why they're valid and where they came from and what's this thing called Old Catholics and why the Church of Rome has such a problem with all of us. So that's going to be on the first summer special in July. So this is going to be part of a bit of a theological series for a few episodes. And we may need a part 2 or 3 to some of these. I don't know how long it will take to get us through all of them. But a lot of good, interesting subject matter coming up in the weeks to come. So be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And please, if you find value in what we do, please support the channel because, it's the church that pays for it. And if you're enjoying it, then be a part of it. Be a part of helping us to be able to continue to do this work. No one here gets paid, right? It's all volunteer. So please consider supporting the ministry that makes this available to you. And also, you can do that if you don't want to give money. You can also do that by liking and sharing this broadcast on all the platforms that you're watching it. So wherever you are, please give a like. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel or you follow the page wherever you happen to be, whichever account you're on. Make sure you've done that. And then leave comments, because comments on these videos is what the algorithm looks for. If nobody comments on them, if nobody likes them, then you know what the algorithm does? It says, oh, this is not interesting. We're not going to push it forward. So the best way really to support this channel is to do that if you're not going to support it with a pledge, okay? So we're going to get started here tonight. I do have an interesting little story, though. We were talking this season about and I think we talked about it a little bit last season too, about simulation theory and, how closely it links to Carl Jung's synchronicity. There seems to be a relationship there, almost a type of, almost like a computer-like design between them. And it's quite remarkable if you study divination, as we've talked about on this show before. You'll really see the computational aspects of this, almost as if life is an algorithm itself. And so every now and then I have experiences that kind of lead me into this. I don't think I talked about this on the show before, but a few weeks ago, I think I intended to and never did. So I'm going to share it tonight because it kind of goes into tonight's subject matter. There was a mall where I grew up that was built after I had moved to Florida, but we would go back and visit family from time to time. So as we went back there, this new mall that was built called the Emerald Square Mall, and Massachusetts, it is a very large mall, 3 stories, a big rectangle, but massive. You can't see one side from the other there. It's so far down. And, I was curious because in the day that this was purchased, built and I don't remember the developer that purchased the land and built this thing, but it was a massive mall and every single store was full and it was the place to be. It was the place to go. And things have changed with malls in the United States. Not so in other places, around the world. They're alive and well in Asia. But here in the United States, malls don't do well anymore. Everyone wants to buy things online now. So I was curious about this. Now, let me preface this by saying the first time I went to this mall, again, we lived in Florida, but we were visiting family up in Massachusetts. And I remember going to the mall with my mother for the first time. And it was a memorable occasion because we had never seen in that part of the country before a mall this massive. It's huge. It's probably the biggest mall I had ever seen up to that point. In fact, I'm sure it was. And so we went into the mall. We spent the whole day there, ate in the food court. It was actually a really good food court back then. And went to all the stores, and it was just like, it was an all-day affair. You could get there in the morning and not leave until evening, well after the sun went down, and you still probably didn't see it all or go to all the stores. It was that big, that full. And so I remember leaving that in the evening and getting in the car and turning on in the car. And I don't know why certain memories stick in your head, but this one just did. And it's been with me, and it's something I think about. It's something I've thought about for decades now. For some reason, this memory of leaving Emerald Square Mall and getting in the car and turning on the engine and hearing Elton John's Sacrifice, which was a kind of an unusual song for him. It wasn't his usual kind of music. It was kind of a unique sort of sound I felt to Elton John. And I think it was the album was new. The song was new at the time, or at least newish. And so I remember hearing that song play while we left the mall. And that memory just stays with me. I don't know why. I don't know why I have it. Nothing was significant. Nothing happened. But other than we went to this new mall and that song was playing when we left. Well, I decided a few weeks ago to check to see what's going on with the Emerald Square Mall. How is it doing in this new age of mall closures and, these wonderful places we used to be able to go and hang out, becoming, shadows of their former selves. And so I went and looked on YouTube, which is great because people do these walkthroughs, and I love walkthrough videos. I mean, I'm so grateful to people that do walkthrough videos because I find them very soothing and very entertaining. And the fact that you can kind of travel along with people and see parts of the world that maybe you have no chance to go to or no time or no interest, but still would like to see what it's kind of like, out of the travel type of shows that might be out there about it. So they do these, and they do them on malls too. And so Emerald Square had quite a few of them, and I picked one, and the guy was taking us through the whole mall, and it's a disgrace what it's like. The whole third floor is completely empty. Yeah. Most of the second floor is completely empty. And the first floor still is moderately functioning. The escalators are broken. They don't even work anymore. Nobody's spending time on fixing. There was a ceiling collapse in one section that's just closed off. They just left it like that. Unbelievable stuff. Very sad because this place was just like amazing when it opened. And so it was really kind of strange because, I mean, I remember it very well. Went there quite a few times and just seeing it in that state was awful. But this is the interesting thing, okay? As the guy was, who's filming this was like last year, as he was getting ready to leave, you see the exit, and it's the very exit that we went out. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you know that the music playing on the speaker in the mall was Elton John's Sacrifice? Now, that is freaking weird to me. I know that is the epitome of Carl Jung's synchronicity, but that is so freaking strange. I mean, come on. It's almost like as if the universe is taunting me. It's like, come on, what are you trying to say? And it brings me back to what we talked about. It makes me think, okay, see, there's another example of simulation theory in action.
That's pretty strange.
Because, when's the last time you've heard Elton John Sacrifice on the radio?
Oh,
That does not play. It's a strange song.
I haven't heard it in years.
Yeah, it was big at the time when he came out with it, but it's not really a song that gets played today. I hadn't heard it in years. In fact, I mostly had forgotten about it, except for when I think about this memory. This is the only time it comes to mind, is when I think about the memory of leaving the mall and that was playing. And here it is. And this video from 2025, a guy walking through showing the state of this mall, decades later, 3 decades later, and it's still it's so strange to me. But remember, it wasn't on the speaker. You can't even say it like it was an old recording that they just never stopped playing. I mean, it was in my car.
It was in your car, yeah.
Yeah. So this was on the speaker in the mall in the video, but when we left, it was after I had hit the ignition and it was playing on the radio in the car. Strange stuff. I don't know.
Weird.
It is weird. We'll talk about that.
Those things.
It's one of those things is right. Yeah. We'll talk about that maybe as we get more into tonight's subject. But joining us from Australia, we have Father Chris Yates. How you doing tonight, Father?
I'm all right. I was saying Elton John does play an awful lot in England, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they love him. But does Sacrifice play a lot? That song?
Yeah. But he's from there. It entered the zeitgeist. There was a famous comedy sketch. You can find it on YouTube. I can't remember the name of the show he was on where, someone who impersonates him is singing Sacrifice and Elton John comes on the show. So it's kind of, it's got that sort of, cultural glue that means it's played fairly regularly. English people are kind of, it's dying off a bit with the rate of migration from people from very different cultures, but there's still that sense of, and I'm outside of it now. Like, when I go back once or twice a year to England, and there's a sort of shared conversation going on that I don't know about, because England they tend to be better at that sort of the cultural glue. It's not so fragmented as it is in Australia and in the USA. But anyway, it's a good song, by the way.
It is. I like it.
I saw him live on his last tour. I when he came to Newcastle, Australia, I went to watch him.
He's not in good health anymore, is he?
Well,
I had heard that he was in very bad. Yeah, he's old, but I heard that his health has been in rapid decline. I don't know.
But his performance was remarkable, and also his band is still the same band he had.
Oh, really?
In the 70s.
Wow, so, that's crazy.
It was a great night. Anyway, I'm off topic.
No.
But no, things are good in Australia, not least that the weather's cheered up. It's been pretty rainy. It's been very English weather recently, but it's blue skies today. So last night I was outside New South Wales Parliament at a rally with my sort of day job, where they're moving to ban sex-selective abortion. Mm-hmm. The idea that you get a sex test and if it's a girl you get an abortion. Yeah. They're trying to make that illegal. Wow. And it was an interesting experience because it wasn't like a normal sort of pro-life rally where it's all church people.
That's some communist shit right there.
Yeah, well, this had feminists there. It had, it was a very interesting group of people, and it's sort of I don't know. I'm interested in things that bring people together. There are negative things that bring people together, and there are positive things. But I don't know. It actually gave me some hope for the future. So okay. I dare to hope. They always say, it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've experienced that death maybe a few times already.
I think we all have.
Joining us from Tennessee, we have April Narod. How you doing tonight, April?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to tonight's episode because what got me into the paranormal is UFOs and such. So I'm looking forward to hearing what kind of stuff you've got to say, and hopefully I'll have lots of questions for you.
Sure. Yeah, there's 2 types of paranormal people I find. There's those that enter through the haunting stage, and then there are those that enter through the UAP UFO stage. I find the alien. Those are two very different types of paranormal people, and then you got like the cryptids that are sort of in the middle. But overall, I find that those that find the paranormal through the alien UFO door tend to be the ones that are really more interesting to work with and talk to. So I'm glad you're in that door, because that was my door as well. It wasn't ghosts, it was aliens. That was where my first interest in the paranormal came from. My uncle was an avid UFO person, really was interested in Project Blue Book and all that stuff, and he had all the books, and he could like do citations, and was absolutely 100% convinced that the government was holding back information about it. So I'm sure he's still alive. I don't talk to that side of the family anymore, so I don't really know what he thinks about it, but I'm sure he's still alive and probably eating all this news up, because he's been waiting his entire life for disclosure. And I don't know if you can call what we've got right now disclosure, but some people call it that, and some people are referring to it as soft disclosure. So tonight, as we get into this subject in the second hour, we'll talk about why this is so significant, and particularly how we view it from a spiritual perspective. So yeah, I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, April. You always do. All right.
I'll do my best.
Speaking of questions, let's get into the ether. So what do you have for us from the ether?
All right. The first question comes from This is the AB off of YouTube, and they ask, can anyone enter heaven before the day of judgment?
All right. This is a great question, because it assumes something about the spiritual nature that is erroneous. So the question is actually flawed, although it's a very common, usual, and not a bad question for a Christian to ask. However, it is a flawed question. And the reason for that is you have to understand, okay, that the beatific vision, so if you're talking about entering heaven, you're talking about entering into the presence of God, which means that you would enter into his reality. So this is what the church refers to as the church triumphant, the saints that exist in heaven. And so in that case, in that sense, the answer to this question from a strictly Catholic and very superficial point of view is yes, you go to heaven, and then the judgment, the day of judgment, is when, after the parousia, and Christ comes back, and then that's when it becomes a public proclamation as to what the measure of your soul, and of course that's just the generic understanding of it. I'm going to take it a little bit further for you, because there's a metaphysical side to this that using just the same kind of logical inferences that one uses to infer purgatory as a theology, or any other number of things like transubstantiation. This is no different. Okay, the reality of it is, if you're talking about entering the kingdom of heaven, which means you're in the beatific vision, which means you're now in the presence of God, and now you have, in a certain sense, become one with God, well, then that means that you become part of the timelessness of the condition of God. So those in heaven are not inside time, they're outside time. So there is no before the day of judgment, there is no after the day of judgment, there is just restored wholeness. There is no time. So the question is flawed from the standpoint that a person that achieves this doesn't need to worry about it, because it's already done. And that's why I say to you, and you've heard me say this before, and people might be confused when I say it, so here's the reason why you don't need to be confused anymore, because this is the answer. If you are lucky enough and skillful enough and committed enough and receive enough grace to attain salvation, then you're already in heaven. You just haven't caught up to it yet. Because if you make it to heaven, then being outside of time means you've always been there, and you will always be there. And that cannot change, because it becomes a permanent reality at that point. That's the part of the paradox of trying to understand time. So in this sense, the day of judgment, I mean, there's a theological answer that kind of takes into account a linear perspective, because I guess the church does realize that we are linear people, and most people can't think in a non-linear way. But if we're here in this in this church and in this show, we're going to talk about things from a deeper perspective. And the actual answer to the question is, there is no before the judgment day. Everything is already done. So in a sense, a person that has attained to heaven is already in heaven. The only reason why you just don't realize it yet is because you haven't realized it yet. And maybe that's what dying and entering into the awareness, or dare I say the gnosis of God, is all about. Okay? So that's the best answer I can give. Now, I know where this comes from because there are some Christian theologians and some Christian sects that teach that when a Christian dies, even if they've attained salvation, they go into like a deep sleep. I guess they kind of see this as going into Sheol for a time, and then they don't really go to heaven until the resurrection of the dead at the end of time and the judgment day. That's a valid perspective if we're going to, again, talk about these in very superficial theological terms and try to use linear allegories to make sense of it. But if we're talking about it metaphysically, there is no time at this point. There would be time for somebody that is still transitioning. That's true. Like I think, let me put it this way. I would say there is time for those in purgatory. I think time still exists in the condition of purgatory. But I do not think there can be any time applied in any way to the kingdom of heaven, which is why I would say, and how I would say, the saints reach out to us and can intercede for us in perfect ways. Protestants will sometimes say, I don't need to, why would you pray for the intercession of a saint when you can just pray for your own intercession by going to God? Well, part of the answer to that is because the saints can pray perfectly and we can't. So wouldn't you want someone who can pray perfectly for you, praying for you? How do saints pray perfectly? Well, they pray perfectly because they don't have the time component. There is no, and they don't even have the space component. Because heaven is also not a location, right? There is no time and space. These are fragments of the fallen universe. I will testify to this, that this is exactly what it is. But see, we are in a time now, modernity has afforded us an understanding of theoretical physics that makes answering questions like this a little easier than 2,000 years ago. So yeah, you can still use the answers that were given 2,000 years ago or even 1,000 years ago. That's fine. They're not wrong. It's just we can probably talk about things a little bit more specifically now because we have a better vocabulary. Father Chris, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, I read from this poem of the Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot last week.
Yeah, you did.
It's exactly relevant to this.
Yeah.
It starts time present and time past are perhaps both present in time future. And time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been is an abstraction, remaining a perpetual possibility, only in a world of speculation. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. So,
I love that. I love it.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's my favorite poet that's ever lived.
Yeah.
And he was a bank clerk. I love that. I love that he was a bank clerk. I love it.
Nice.
So what was I going to say? So we are. It's interesting. You use the word realized, which I think was a really helpful word. That we haven't realized it yet. The whole point is we will realize it at some point. Mm-hmm. And that element to it has an element of time, right? Because we will realize it in the future, but it's also already happened. And look, another way to think about this, particularly helpful for Christians, is people will say Jesus died for your sins. Okay, true. Fact check, true. Okay, so Jesus died for your sins. Well, Jesus died before you were born. So how did he die for your sins?
Right.
Because his sacrifice is beyond time, because he's eternal. And therefore he died for sins that in time have not yet been committed. But in the presence of God, which is beyond time and includes all time, that's how the remedy has come about. God became a man, and because all time is present to God, and all possibilities, that's how you can say in 2026, Jesus died for my sins. Not only did he die for your sins in the past tense, he also died for the sins that you've not yet committed.
Right.
You know, and so for the Christian, this is actually a concept that's at the heart of our faith. So yeah, all time is present to God. It will be realized. You see, time is a creation of God. Okay. Now you said, you know, and I'm quite happy with it. The allegory of the fall from Eden. You know, in Eden, everything's just basically at the still point, as T.S. Eliot would say, at the still point where, you know, you can eat whatever you like, not that tree. You know, but you won't die. You don't. You're naked and you've no idea. You've no consciousness of what, you know, that's in any way an issue. And as soon as we get the knowledge of good and evil, in a sense, we're banished from Eden, and that banishing is the beginning of time. That's why we have this image of women will, you know, labor in childbirth, that you have to work the sweat of your brow, and that you'll die, because time is now a thing. This doesn't mean that this was, you know, plan B of God. This was the plan all along.
Right.
But time is a creation, just like we are, just like the earth is, just like the cosmos is. And so, like all created things, it will have its beginning and its end. And it's at the end of time that we will realize the beatific vision, to be in the presence of God in heaven. And so I'm at risk of flying at 30,000 feet at the moment, but so I'm trying to keep it as practical as possible. But some things are supposed to be difficult, right? Not everything's supposed to be redactable to you know, a one sentence.
Well, nor are we entitled to understand everything.
Right.
No, we just had Trinity Sunday, right? Yeah. And of course we can talk about the Trinity. We more say what we can't say about the Trinity than what we can. But ultimately, you know, when talking of the Trinity, we've had to invent words.
Yes.
Words like consubstantial, right? That's an invented word, because this is a new thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a new concept. When God entered into time and space and became a man, that involved we had to invent new words for that, because it hadn't happened before. It was unprecedented.
Right.
Just like, you know, when they invented the microchip, it needed a name. And so rather than saying, "Oh, put that in plain English," it's like, no, you need to learn a new word.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this case of Jesus, the word come flesh. So I think that this is where it is tricky, because we have to operate both in a sense of understanding time, but also knowing that time is a creature and time will come to an end. And at the end of the time, now, there are some exceptions, okay, to the answer to this question. The most obvious being the Blessed Virgin Mary, okay? But here's a significant difference between what we say, what we know happened with the Blessed Virgin Mary and every other creature, is that we believe that Our Lady was taken body and soul into heaven. We call it the Assumption. And that is partly an answer to the question. She's not sleeping in the ground because she was taken body and soul to heaven.
Right.
And of course, Jesus Christ himself ascended into heaven, and he ascended in his physical form. Humanity is forever united with divinity. Right. So these are difficult concepts, but if we have in our minds that time is a creature, that helps us to sort of tame time into the space it needs to have.
That's the same thing with the cross, right? We
can think that time is just, you know, something dominating and something we can't help. Like, I can't help my hair going white, but actually time is a creature and it will come to an end.
I mean, it's the same thing with the cross, right? The cross defeats Satan. He's done. He's finished. He's already. Yes. He's done. He has lost, and yet we still contend with evil because we still haven't realized the fullness of the cross yet. We still don't understand the fullness of that sacrifice yet, and that's the profound thing.
It's why the devil knows his time is running out. Because at the end of time, he's defeated.
From his perspective, his time has run out. I would argue, and see, this is it. This is the thing, and this is why I say the Jewish people were very smart to refer to their concept of evil as Yetzirah, because the only place in which the devil has any existence is now in our own nature, in our mind, what we generate out of the remnants of that evil. But I don't think it's accurate metaphysically, now that the cross has been established, at least revealed to us, maybe not fully realized, but at least it's revealed now, to understand that defeat, it's not a ticking time clock on Satan. The clock's already out. It's done. He doesn't have any power left. There's nothing that Satan can do to change. He can't redo or undo what the cross has done. So it's game over. It's checkmate.
He can only use you to do it. I mean, there's that famous
but even
icon,
then, even then, nothing changes.
Oh yeah, ultimately that's only for your ruin.
It's only
that's right.
Yes.
It doesn't damage God. No. And
it doesn't.
That great icon of someone. It looks like Jesus.
Right.
And the devil's arm is through the crook of his. It looks like Jesus is doing something, but it's the devil doing something.
Yeah.
And that's us. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't damage God.
No.
It can ruin our soul. We can permit our own souls to be ruined.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
free choice.
Anyone can see that.
Right. It's a free choice.
It's a free choice. So, and you can see that this side of the grave in people, right? That they've just destroyed their character. I mean, there's always hope this side of the grave, by the way.
Yes.
So don't despair if you think you're in that kind of space. The answer is at hand. It's yeah. I mean that's why. The words of is it 1 Peter, the devil is a roaring lion, wanders about seeking the ruin of souls. That he seeks the ruin of souls. He can't cause it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, but he is seeking it, and he can tempt you, and
because the shadow of that reality continues to exist in the fallen universe. It's built into the fallen universe now. So,
and if you choose to live in the shadows, you can allow yourself to be dominated by that, but you're allowing it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, April. That's the answer to the question. What's the next?
Good question, by the way.
Yeah, it was. It is a good one.
All right. The next question is, do you believe in progressive revelation that the church can grow in its understanding of the deposit of faith? And this came from Cameron off of YouTube.
Yeah,
yes.
I do. Absolutely. I see that. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit last week as well, that, we can get stagnant as Christians because of the immutability of God, the immutability of doctrine, the immutability of truth. God's reality does not change. Therefore, the truths of Scripture do not change. And even though, it might seem antiquated to read the words of some 2,000-year-old book, when maybe something written today might be a little bit more relevant to the people of today and maybe more accessible, it doesn't change because of that immutability. The problem is that sometimes that creates a fixed mentality where people now don't want to accept or receive, or not willing to tolerate new information, because they run and live in this constant perpetual fear that new information is going to change the old. And the Holy Spirit is a dynamic force, as we talked about last week. The Holy Spirit guides and inspires us, leads us through discernment, and truth is constantly being revealed. God is still revealing himself in new and unique ways, but people have the church has largely stopped listening to this. Not always, though, because, I know that there's a lot of criticism that came with Vatican II, the Second Vatican Council, and there's even calls I've heard for a Third Vatican Council. People have been kind of trying to push Leo to do a third one. And I think I don't know. I think it's too soon. But, the fact is, these ecumenical councils are because of the Holy Spirit's dynamic nature, that new information has to be processed into the church, and then the church has to decide how are we going to doctrinally handle this information now that it has been revealed to us. So absolutely, there's a progressive aspect to God in this sense, and would be arrogant fools to think that what was taught 2,000 years ago is the be-all and end-all of everything God has to teach us, because that means we've just completely closed ourselves off. And the Holy Spirit doesn't want that. The whole point of the tongues of fire descending upon the apostles was to empower them with the grace of the church so that it could now grow and meet the needs of all the different types of people that would come to experience the gospel. The gospel is just the root foundation, but the way it reaches us is any number of ways, and new ways that haven't even been seen yet are on the horizon. In fact, that's a good question for tonight, because we're going to discuss a little bit about how would the Holy Spirit handle an alien contact situation? What does that mean for the church? This is an example of one in which we might have to face that someday, maybe someday very soon, maybe even in our lifetime. I don't know.
I think
go ahead.
One of the idols of our age, it's not just our age, from the boomers onwards at least, is neolatry, making an idol of the new. Right. So, and that's why everyone's distracted. It's new information, massive news that happened. Like, your president, someone tried to shoot him right in the head. And it's like that. Oh, yeah. Well, really? Like,
yeah.
Whereas think about JFK, right?
It's kind of a big deal.
In an era when there was less of this, constant 24-hour news cycle and the rest of it, that becomes a cultural pivot point for generations of people who are not Americans as well, right? But so we've got this kind of constant bombardment of new, next, and it's become a form of idolatry, neophilia, that we love the new got to be better than the old, So I mean, in England they kicked the hereditary peers out of the House of Lords. That's got to be progress, right? No. I mean, I couldn't disagree more. It's a disastrous decision. We've introduced more democracy where the democracy we've got is not really the answer. So, so this worship of the new. Now, go back to the original question. God is the rock of ages. God is the unchanging one. So God does not change. There's not a sense that God is new. Right? God is the Ancient of Days. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What is different is, and this is the wonderful thing about our relationship with the one who made us, we're invited to enter into deeper and deeper and deeper relationship with God. And because he's God, that is an inexhaustible depth. Even in the beatific vision, we will not know all things. We will never fully know God because we're not equal to God. And that's not a burden. That doesn't place God as some, parental figure that's, it's inviting us into a relationship. It's why we get this image in the gospel that Christ is the bride, right? Oh, sorry, is the bridegroom. The church is the bride. It's a little like a marriage relationship. Healthy marriage relationships, they never exhaust one another. You never say, well, I told you I loved you 3 years ago, so I don't need to do it again. There's a constant falling in love. And that's the image of the journey of faith in getting to know God. Is actually it's a love song. And it's an inexhaustible love song. And even God doesn't limit the love that he offers towards us. So this is a much better way of conceiving of God than to say, is God doing something new? No, God's not doing anything new. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But he's inviting us into a new relationship. And therefore, the church as, temporal institution has responded to God in a way that looks like a development, right? As humans understand it. But it's really just a deepening of that relationship, and therefore deepening our understanding. And very slowly, which is why ecumenical council should be very rare. If you ask me, Vatican II was far too close to Vatican I. I don't mean anything about the actual, council itself. I just mean these things are supposed to happen very seldom in the life of the church, every few hundred years maybe, because it's supposed to develop slowly and take everyone with it. And it's about plunging depths. It's not about the new and this submission to the idolatry of neolatry.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, to the point that you're making, that people don't understand, that progress itself, or what we would even see as an archetype of progress in the form of what we have basically a political party progressive liberalism. I would not call them Democrats. They call themselves Democrats, but I would argue they're not really Democrats. And it's really a misnomer. It's actually a bit of a hypocrisy to call for them to call themselves progressive, because progress is building upon the foundation of something that came before it, not throwing it away. Progressives want to tear apart everything that came before and start with a completely new foundation. That's not progress. That's something completely different. It's a type of
tabula rasa.
Yeah. So the church doesn't progress in the way that progressive politics progresses. The church progresses by building upon the previous structure, so that everything that comes before it does not lose validity, is not in error. It's just better revealed through time. I mean, if you went back to the fathers of the church and talked transubstantiation, they would not have probably received that very well, or even understood exactly what you were getting at with it. But now we can talk in Catholic theological circles about transubstantiation, and it doesn't negate anything that the fathers of the church taught. It enhances our understanding of it. And that's because that kind of progress built upon what came before it, didn't tear down what came before it. So, there's two types of progress, and I think the kind that we see in liberal politics is not progress at all. It's a type of destruction, really. It's a reinvention, and that's, I think, more so the kind of...
Well, it's an abuse of the word progressive.
It is.
I mean,
Of course it is.
Progressivism has become a political ideology, so we can talk about the progressives. But you're right. There's nothing about it.
It's an error to use the term. It's an error to use the term. Yeah, I mean, they really need to come up with something else, because it's more of a tearing down than a building up. They're tearing down the past. They're not building up from the past, and that's very different motivations, and that's really the ultimate problem with them.
And it's ultimately, this is why the universities are the problem, because they're really fond of deconstructionism.
Yeah,
let's deconstruct everything,
right?
But they've got no reconstructive vision. No. And and I'm with Chesterton. Don't start tearing down walls unless you know why they're there. Yeah. And that's a fundamental difference in approach to life. And I've been on both sides of this fence. I grew up much more reactionary and what have you. But I'm of the hereditary peers. And I know this sounds mad to Americans that we had people in the House of Lords who were there because 600 years ago their father fought a war with the king and was given a hereditary peerage. Although I will say it's a bit like what William F. Buckley said about rather being governed by the first 150 names in the phone book. There's a sense of, so I think it does function, but parties come in and in a populist way. In this case, it was the populist left. They say, this is not democratic. Let's get rid of it, and they've got no idea what they're doing. That's the charitable version. They've got no idea what they're doing, but what they know is they've got to tear down and deconstruct the old ways.
That's not progress. That's not progress. Yeah.
Well, but they've got this absolute devotion to neophilia. They think the new will be better.
I think neophilia is a better term for it. And you know what? Since people like to categorize the philias as these horrible kind of perversions, then by all means give them that term, because I would say that is a perversion of the word progress. All right, April, what's our next one?
The next question kind of goes along with this last one, in that it's about kind of the evolution of the church's understanding.
Sure.
It asks, I keep running into references of the divine council or of it being alluded to. What is it?
Okay, so this was a question that was asked a few months ago on the network. It created a bit of a controversy, I would say, and it wasn't intended. It was your question, April, but the answer that I gave...
You're going to keep asking it.
Yeah. Got to keep asking it. The answer I gave was not received terribly well by another member, and so it created a bit of a back and forth. So we're going to try to cover this again and being as complete as possible, giving honor to the other perspectives out there. Okay, so the reality is, and this is how the church looks at it, okay, is that the heavenly court is essentially, anytime the divine council or anything of that nature is referred to in the Old Testament, the church looks at this heavenly court as God in his entirety, presiding over all of his creation with the heavenly hosts, the choirs of angels. That's essentially how the church interprets this and how it teaches its doctrines from it. The ancient Israelites didn't have a concept of the Holy Trinity at this point. Of course, that had not been revealed yet, and God had not yet revealed himself in that way. In the personhood of Jesus Christ, or in the sustenance of the Holy Spirit. So the concept followed a model that was closer to what they understood to be, and that was kingly rule, royalty, that type of model that was common in the ancient world, and that was how it would be allegorically explained. Okay, now. The controversy was that that we have a member that stated that, or truly genuinely believes that Judaism was not monotheistic in the ancient world. He argued that they were henotheists, and essentially that is that they would see God, the God that they worshipped, as a supreme God, but there were all these lesser gods. And that he would argue that this interpretation of ancient Judaism, that the council was these lesser gods, the church rejects that interpretation. Now, there are some biblical archaeologists that hold that interpretation, but the church rejects that history. And honestly, it doesn't need. I mean, the church doesn't need to revisit this, because the idea that the Israelites were always monotheistic does not really contradict the history either. It's really whichever direction you want to go. Now, we can look to the fathers of the church to try to get an understanding as to how the early Christians would have looked at this. And so Justin Martyr, in the First Apology, chapter 5, wrote, "The gods of the nations are demons." Irenaeus, in Against Heresies, book 3, chapter 6, wrote, "They who are called gods are not gods." Tertullian, in the Apologeticus, chapter 22, "The gods of the heathens are demons." Augustine of Hippo, in the City of God, book 9, chapter 23, "The gods of the nations are demons." So over and over and over and over again, the early Christians, who were, I think, far better theologians than anybody today, they could rival people today because they were closer to being there to the actual people that this was all about. And a lot of them came out of that worldview and had a better contextual understanding of that worldview. They all saw that these other gods that the Old Testament refers to was not lesser gods, not competing deities to Yahweh, but rather demonic forces, however you want to interpret them. Now, it is something that's important to understand. This is actually a really clever time to insert this question into this show, because a big part of our next hour, when we start talking about aliens, is addressing the proclivity of some Christians today, our vice president apparently being one of them, who are arguing that these aliens that are potentially, allegedly visiting us are demons. And so we're going to kind of address that in a contextual way, because the word demons, you think you know what it means. All right, you've watched your ghost adventures, and you've seen me on TV, and you've listened to your pastor, and you've done all these things. You've read your Bible, and you think you know what it means. But the problem is the word demon had a lot of different definitions over the years. And the one that we tend to use today is a post Second Temple Judaism definition that was expanded upon and became really it became fantastic over the course of the Middle Ages. We're going to talk about, though, what the ancient people's understanding of them would. What did the Israelites think that demons were, and what did Jesus, in the people of Jesus' time, really think what demons were. And when you really kind of classify them down or generalize them out to being fallen angels, well, even that is not quite what you think it means. I promise you. We're going to talk about that in the second hour, which is going to help to explain why the Old Testament kind of refers to some of these things as almost like gods. They talked about as gods. And you have to also understand the Israelites lived in a polytheistic environment. You know, there were regional gods that people believed in, and everyone was like, well, my God's better than your God. You know, there's a lot of that kind of like chest thumping going around in the ancient world. And so these ancient books
got over that, eh?
What's that? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so one can acknowledge the historical context without necessarily requiring Israel to be henotheistic. The church recognizes that the Israelites were monotheistic and that they were being influenced by others. So it's not to say that the Israelites didn't sometimes say, hey, maybe we should try some of the other gods. They certainly did do that. Maybe some of these other entities are going to help us more than the one that we've been worshiping. I mean, they were unfaithful in a lot of cases. The Old Testament talks about this, but that doesn't mean they were really gods. It means that they were misinterpreted and misunderstood to be gods, because there is only one God. There only has ever been one God, at least from the Judeo-Christian perspective. And that's the only one that the church adopts. It doesn't make room for there being other understandings here. So, but even if they were henotheistic, it doesn't really matter, because the way that we use this information today is to understand that in a more enlightened approach, having more revelation available to us, now we understand. Now, I'm not going to exactly call them demons in the fallen angel sense. I might, though, call them demons in the original historical sense, and I'll explain what that means. We'll come back to this question in the second hour when I get to that part of my presentation, which is coming up here in just a few moments. Father, is there anything you want to add to this one? Because I know
not
that,
really. I think the whole thing is cross purposes. I think you can say from a historical, archaeological point of view, the Israelites at that time had a mixture of beliefs about God, which included that. But obviously, God became a man, and therefore we entered into a deeper relationship with God, and therefore the way that Christians reflect on the Old Testament is not entirely archaeological in nature. You know, we look back at it thematically. The classical description is to say there's types and shadows in the Old Testament that through the lens of the New you can then see. So you read Isaiah, for example, and the suffering servant, we would say, is God the Son going to take on flesh, Jesus Christ. But obviously, it would be foolish and wrong to say that the people that wrote that had that in mind, right? So I think the whole argument from the get-go was at cross purposes, but no one asked my opinion. Because in fact, both things are true.
I would say that both are true.
But you got. This is why it's really important to categorize our thoughts and where they're coming from.
I just want to make sure that when I answer questions, and I think that's where the controversy came from, is that I always invite new perspectives, and I'm open to new perspectives, and I particularly like historical understandings. You know how I talk about Yetzirah, right? And I mean, that's not a typical Christian understanding. That's definitely a pre-Christian understanding of the devil. And it's one that I think we need to revisit because of all of the reasons I've told you. But I would argue also, though, that when you're talking, when a person asks a question in the network, a theological question, and expecting the bishop to give an authoritative answer, I kind of have to yield to the teachings of the church. I can sometimes flavor it in a certain way, or if it's a pure metaphysical question, well, then I don't have to worry about it. But this was a theological question, and I don't want to lead people astray to think, oh yeah, it's okay. There really are other gods out there. No, some of them might have thought there were, but
yeah, right.
they weren't.
Which I know was not the purpose of the person that was,
Yes,
describing
exactly.
the historic view.
Exactly.
Because I know that they believe there's only one God and the teachings of the church.
Yes.
So, and I think so. When it was across purposes, I think that, and in fairness, I would agree. Like I've never realized that the network was for the sort of authoritative teachings of the church. I mean, as you know, my
just
style is to
the
say-
question section. Everything else doesn't.
yeah,
just the question.
which I wasn't aware of either. But I think, as you know, my style is to say, well, the church teaches this, and let me help you understand that.
Yeah.
But if I'm speaking not with that authority, I'm normally fairly explicit about that.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I think that's important. I mean, and I probably need to do a better job on this show, because sometimes I can get lost in the answer of the question without making sure the audience understands. Like, we're talking about this from this point of view, because this show has a lot of perspectives.
That's why you get all those comments from Bible thumping Southern Baptists.
It's true, because they're only seeing 30 seconds. They're not even getting the whole the whole question, the whole answer. So we try to do a little bit better.
We could begin each show by reciting the Athanasian Creed, but it would be quite boring.
Okay, well, we can put that maybe in the disclaimer at the beginning. All right, we're going to take our break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking about aliens. Don't go away.
They are among us. As the skies light up, they believe we are blissfully unaware. But this activity by non-human extraterrestrial technology is capturing the attention of humans.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second hour of Vestiges After Dark. It is now time to begin tonight's subject matter on alien disclosure. UAPs, UFOs, whichever you prefer to call them. We're going to break this down rationally as much as possible and then give you a good Christian or maybe even just a grounded spiritual perspective on it, okay? Hopefully we can make it a little more realistic than some others out there are doing. And you'll walk away from this episode with a little more confidence and understanding what's really going on. Don't go away. All right, I'm going to start this off by basically prefacing it with the understanding for those who might be new to this show and maybe a little bit of a review for those of you who have been with this show for a long time, or maybe just been with me for a long time, whether you are a student or a member of this church, or, you know, just a fan of Ghost Adventures and you've been following me on social media. All of you are going to be welcome at this discussion, and certainly, hopefully, it will give you some background and foundation to why I take the subject seriously. I probably wouldn't. I maybe would take a much more skeptical approach to it if I myself hadn't had so many personal experiences with this phenomenon. So that is the reason why I want to know more. Now, I'm not taking that, and that's not to say that I'm taking everything that I'm going to share with you now at face value. I don't. But I will say that I do feel that there is some substance to this discussion and what is being shared right now in both mainstream media and the government. And I think that there is something to be, you know, something to discover here, something, a curiosity perhaps that we need to focus in on, because I have had experiences. I have seen UFOs with my own eyes. I have had them in my life going back from a very early age. My first encounter I don't actually remember my first encounter, but my father was there and told me what had happened. I kind of have a vague recollection of this, but we were coming back from a drive-in movie, and I think it was Pinocchio, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Pinocchio. We were coming back late. It was a late movie. I had fallen asleep during the movie, so I was really groggy. And, this is Massachusetts, so a lot of dark, wooded drives. And so we were coming back on some lonely highway, very close encounters of the third kind-esque. And as we were coming down this road, my father noticed that there was this diamond-shaped craft that was just floating and following the car. He'd look up and he'd see, and it would just be there, and it would stay in the same place over our vehicle all the way back to our home. And when we got out, my dad got out of the car, he told my mother, and I was still asleep, stay in the car with him. I want to see what this thing is. And he got out, and it came down lower, and he at that point realized that it was an extremely large thing, that typical pyramid, triangular rather, craft that you hear some people talk about, very large, almost invisible except for some lights at the points. And, if you're in a dark sky, you can barely see it. But it was massive and made absolutely no noise and just hovered there. And it was so close that he could throw a rock at it. And my dad, being my dad, decided that's exactly what he was going to do.
Sounds like
it. And he took the rock and he threw it at the craft, and the craft went, just blinked out as if it wasn't, just completely just took off. Now, that was the first thing. I don't remember it too well. I kind of remember waking up and seeing my dad out there and seeing the lights in the sky, but I don't have much more of a memory of it than that. I was probably about 4 years old when this had happened. There were other things, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about my personal experiences because that's not really the focus of this show. And I think the audience is aware of the time that I've had experiences with the gray aliens and had what would be the precursor or the beginning of an alien abduction scenario. I've shared that on this show before, so I'm not going to repeat that until the third hour. If you want me to talk about it, I will. If there's time, we'll talk about it. You'd let me know. But what we're going to talk about tonight mostly is the theological discernment involved in this. And so my presentation to you tonight is going to give you the background, the foundation. Now you know the motive, because this is why I'm interested in this subject. I wouldn't take it seriously. And I think those of you who know me know I am not very easily convinced by spectacular information. When clients come in and they say they think they got a demon or they think they're possessed, you really have to convince me. You're gonna have to bend over backwards to convince me that that's true, because that's not going to be the first thing I think. Don't come at me with this, because I'm going to find every rational reason for why you're having these experiences. Now, I will validate your experience. I won't dismiss it, but that doesn't mean it's what you think it is, okay? And this is the same thing, other than the fact that I've had these experiences, so I know that something's going on. And I know that they're true because I've had them firsthand, okay? That's what's very important for me to address tonight, because otherwise I probably would not be as interested in this subject as I am. So we're not going to start this episode off by asking, are aliens really visiting us? Because that's a question that we don't have really the answer to yet. We suspect that that's what's happening, but we don't really know, okay? So we have to begin with a more careful question. What is being disclosed right now, and what is merely being claimed? Okay, and how should Christians think about unexplained phenomena like this without collapsing into a long, pattern of gullibility, denial, and panic? That is not really becoming of a Christian. Okay, we should seek truth. The very definition of a Christian is one who seeks truth, I think. That's the real definition of a Christian. And so by being gullible is not going to lead you to truth, and denying that something's happening isn't going to lead you to truth, and being afraid of it's definitely not going to lead you to truth. So we have to deal with this with the reverse. Instead of gullibility, we need to be inquisitive and cautious. Instead of denial, We need to be open to facts and even open to experiences, because sometimes you can't prove everything that happens. I couldn't prove to you that I had an alien abduction experience. I don't think I was abducted, by the way. It was just the beginning of it. It was just we talked about it. I can't prove to you about the UFOs I've seen. I didn't take pictures. This was before the age of cell phones. I don't have the proof. That didn't mean it didn't happen, though. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. And, I would like to believe that I could talk to people about these experiences and not be dismissed because I can't prove it. And then fear will never lead you to anything good. So get rid of fear. Panic needs to go. So we're going to invert that process for the Christian and look at this from a more rational perspective. So the opening point that I want to make is that UAPs, they're now called unidentified aerial phenomena. They used to be called unidentified flying objects. You can call them UFOs. You can call them UAPs. I really think, though, that it is interesting that we changed the words, because I do think that that part of this disclosure plan is to distance itself from the sensational claims of the past and present this as something more credible. And so if you kept calling them UFOs, I don't think people would take them as seriously. If you start saying, well, now they're UAPs, this is a new designation. So I think that's why they've changed it, and maybe for good reason. Maybe we need to, if we're going to take it more seriously, maybe we need to look at this from that point of view. UAPs are now mainstream. They are a public issue because governments around the world have talked about it. Military pilots, Congress, NASA has even gotten involved in this, and they were the first ones to be denying it. The Pentagon, the Department of War, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, major media outlets like, like it or hate it, Fox News and CNN, they're both talking about them. News Nation. I even saw it on BBC, I think. So mainstream media, okay. They're all publicly discussing this. But saying that UAPs are real does not say by default that aliens are real, okay? And as part of our not being gullible, we have to still maintain a sense of discretion as we talk about this and as we think about this and as we are told things about this by the so-called authorities of the world. We have to still maintain a sense of dignity in ourselves to not just believe whatever, because, look at COVID-19. How did that go when you believed whatever, right? The government doesn't always tell the truth. And the government sometimes takes the truth and changes it. All right, we know this to be true. So this is not immune, even though it's something that we would love to learn more about. Those of you like myself who are interested in the paranormal, particularly this brand of the paranormal, it's tempting to say, oh, I want to believe it all. But we can't let ourselves get carried away in this. We have to be responsible. So this is being reported. It's investigated, but it is unresolved. At the present time, what has been disclosed to us is just a collection of unresolved files. All right? But it's no longer just fringe talk. And there's some very significant things that have happened in recent years, and we've talked about some of them on this show, but I'm going to go into more detail tonight so that, you all here in my audience have a good foundation to take with you into this future that we are seeing unravel before our eyes. The United States government has formally acknowledged that UAP reporting is happening as a product of aviation, intelligence, and national security. Okay, this is something that is happening. UAPs are occurring. People in aviation, pilots, both military and civilian, are seeing these things, reporting these things. The intelligence agencies are being involved in receiving this and investigating. And it has been reported by our government, at least the United States, as a national security issue. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence had a preliminary assessment reviewed of 144 UAP reports, mostly from U.S. Navy personnel. Are you going to tell me that the Navy's just a bunch of liars making shit up? We're not talking about like some podunk guy gets drunk on the side of the road in some rural area in the Midwest. We're talking about the U.S. Navy. I mean, we're talking about highly respectable people who protect our lives, are entrusted with extremely powerful weapons, all right? And very highly trained people, intelligent people, and they are reporting this, okay? So that's significant. But they can only explain what they've seen with a certain amount of confidence, okay? So the reports involve unusual movements of patterns, flight characteristics, things that shouldn't happen, technology that should not exist. Sort of like what I described at the beginning of the show, where things can just go from 0 to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of miles per hour instantaneously. We don't have technology that can do that. No one has technology that can do that on this planet. All right? That's unusual. In 2022, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence its report expanded its database to now 510 total UAP reports, and noticed that there is now reduced stigma and improved reporting procedures for reasons for the increase. So, see, before, if you were a military person, you would be afraid of risking your career. If you were a pilot working for Delta Airlines and you said this, or even a police officer, they might question your sanity. So nobody wanted to report it. And so they're saying the reason why the reports are going up is not just because there's an increase in activity, or maybe not even because there's an increase in activity, but now that people feel safer talking about it. It's kind of like the same thing that happened with rape culture, how women for a long time would not report it because they were afraid that they wouldn't be believed or taken seriously. And then we improved that culturally to a degree, maybe not perfectly, but now, people feel more comfortable coming forward and doing something, protecting themselves, that kind of thing. I think male spouse abuse is another example of that. Men, 50 years ago didn't want to go to the authorities and say, my wife's beating me up. Now, maybe you don't feel so bad about doing that if it's really going on. And this is no different. This is another situation like that. Okay, another example, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO, is, I don't know if they call it ARROW, I think they do call it ARROW, is an office within the United States Office of the Secretary of Defense that continues to collect reports, investigate cases, and publicly release official imagery and case material. And NASA convened an independent UAP study in 2023, so even NASA's on board now. They concluded the UAP study that it requires better data, better sensors, better transparency, and scientific discipline. They've been the hardest nut to crack in this regard. But there's been official video and military witnesses. The Pentagon formally released the famous Navy UAP videos in 2020. You remember those? I think that's what the Tic Tac one came out of. The 2023 House hearing featuring David Grush. Remember this? Ryan Graves and Commander David Fravor. They testified before Congress. I watched that thing. That was, I think, a history-making event, really. I think whatever ends up happening here with disclosure, I think it's always going to be traced back to this one as one of the biggest ones, as a precursor to the disclosure that may eventually happen. Fravor is central because he's the one that personally witnessed the Tic Tac event, right? Graves is central because he framed UAPs as reoccurring aviation safety issues. His main concern was it's not safe to be flying our planes out there with these things crisscrossing us and following us and coming really close to us. I mean, it's dangerous, we can't maneuver like they can. So maybe a collision could happen. Maybe they have happened. I mean, who knows? Remember that plane that went missing in the South Indian Sea?
Yep.
I mean, who knows?
Like, 360, something like that?
They never recovered it. They never found it. They don't know what happened to it. A lot of interesting things occur and could be potentially traced. I'm not saying anyone has linked UAPs to that event, but it just makes you think, like, maybe some of these mysterious events that happen in aviation, could they be related to this? Grush was the most central in that particular hearing, is because he was the one that made the extraordinary claim that the U.S. recovered non-human craft and non-human biologics. That's what he, quote unquote, called it, non-human biologics. And he didn't provide public evidence, but he said he would reveal what he could in a skiff. And Apparently that had occurred, though the results of that has never been given to the public. But he has held firm that we do possess non-human biologics. That's the first time we had a high-ranking official in the, this is not some idiot. Grush was, he was assigned to the White House at one point, I think. This is a guy that is very significant, okay? And he's talking about this in this way. Then, of course, we've all seen this one in 2026 with Trump releasing these files. Some of them are more impressive than others. Some seem to be quite another story. I think there's definitely some of them that are not alien crap by any stretch of the imagination. But some of them are quite, particularly the second release was more interesting to me. The Department of War released the first tranche on May 8th, 2026, and the second one on May 22nd. So this is very recent. The release included videos, audio, documents, historical reports, military and civilian witness material, and all of them are unresolved cases. These prove that the government possesses unresolved UAP-related records, but they do not prove any kind of extraterrestrial origin to them. Okay, and that's important for what we're going to talk about here in a moment. This is all unresolved cases. But then it gets interesting again, because I don't know if you recall this. We talked about this on the show several seasons ago, but in late 2020, the retired Israeli general and longtime head of Israel's space security program, Haim Eshed, okay, I believe it. Is it Haim? Is it Haim Eshed?
Haim
I think it's Haim Eshed. Made headlines after claiming that the United States and Israel had been in contact with extraterrestrial beings belonging to, he quote unquote, he said this, a galactic federation. It sounds like Star Trek here. He alleged there was a secret agreement made between the governments of the world and these beings, and even claimed that there was a joint underground facility on Mars involving Americans and aliens, that we already have Americans over there on Mars living in these alien facilities. He said President Trump, the first time around, his first term, knew about it, but discouraged anyone from revealing it because he felt that humanity isn't ready, which is a shift to the way he's talking about it now in his second term, isn't it? It makes one think, is he being pushed in some way by something? Dr. Hal Puthoff, these names, I'm bad with names.
Dr. Hal.
Dr. Hal, let's just call him Dr. Hal, has recently claimed that people involved in an alleged recovery operation told him that there are at least 4 types of recovered non-human life, because again, going back to David Grush's statement that we have biologics, Dr. Hal Puthoff is saying that we don't just have non-human biologics, we have recovered 4 different species. Now, the 4 different species that he says we have are Nordics, reptilians, greys, and insectoids. Yeah. Again, sounds like Star Trek here. Okay, he made the claim. The claim became news. Okay, but there's again no official confirmation of this. It's always hearsay, people talking about what they know or people they know, and this is what's creating controversy, because it's like, I don't really like Neil deGrasse Tyson too much. I think he's kind of a hack job and oppositional for the hell of it because he enjoys it. But I agree with him when he says, show us the freaking aliens.
Yeah.
If you got them, show it. Prove it. All right, I agree with that. Okay. But this goes back before 2020 because there was Project Blue Book. There's a long government history of this. Project Blue Book was the United States Air Force official UFO investigation program that extended from 1952 to 1969. It collected over 12,000 reports. 701 remain to this day unidentified. And the Air Force concluded that no UFO investigation by Blue Book represented a national security threat. But again, that was what was told to us, not necessarily what actually happened. Blue Book still matters because it shows that the government has been dealing with this for some time, But again, this does not prove that aliens exist. It just shows that something's going on. And that's what we need to remember, is that at the very least, whether you believe that these are aliens or not, whether you believe in any of this stuff or not, is irrelevant to the point that something is going on, though, and we need to pay attention to that. Something is going on that's leading all of these major entities, like the United States government, like the Israeli defense minister, all this stuff, and then mainstream media talking about this like it's normal, okay? Because this used to be just, you'd see this on sightings. You'd hear about it on Art Bell, Coast to Coast. You'd hear about it on fringe shows, or maybe like when History Channel went off the deep end. But but you didn't hear it on CNN. Now you do, okay? Some people think disclosure is a ruse. So let's talk about what some people have made of this, okay? There's the psychological operation theory. This is the belief that UAPs are being used to distract the public from a political, military, financial, or social crisis. I don't subscribe to this one. I don't think that makes a lick of sense. I really don't. I don't think that it's not distracting enough. Because, see, the only people who are really still invested in this are those who really believe it already and want to know. The rest of the world could give two shits about it, and it's not distracting them. So if you really want to create a distraction, you're going to have to create one that, like, the whole world is distracted by. Kind of like COVID-19. Maybe manufacture something like that. I'm saying don't do that again, because don't think you can pull it off. You can, fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, shame on me, right? That's the example here. But I mean, I think that another kind of crisis would be a lot more believable than, drawing something out of what most people thought up until just recently was science fiction. So I don't buy that one. There's the national security cover-up theory. This is where they believe that these stories conceal experimental aircraft, drones, sensor systems, surveillance platforms, and foreign adversary technology. I think that would be more believable if the things that we're seeing made physical sense, but they don't make physical sense. One of these reports actually had tracked a vehicle underwater. One of these UAPs, they're not just in space or in the air, they're also underwater. They track this thing going in excess of 1,000 miles per hour. Nothing can go that fast underwater. It's not possible, and yet this thing was doing that. There's no physics that we know of that can accommodate a vehicle that can do that. This is in one of these reports. And so, these are the kinds of things that, or maybe it was 600 miles an hour. I may be confusing another one with another issue, but either way, faster than what you can travel underwater, and this technology was doing it. I don't think you can say that was like some kind of experimental technology or some foreign technology. I don't believe it. Then there's the disinformation theory. These people believe the military or intelligence agencies have deliberately encouraged UFO mythology to hide classified programs. Again, nice try, but I don't think it's not mainstream enough to collect the interest of large numbers of people. As Father Chris said a couple episodes ago, maybe it was even the last episode, I don't remember which one, but he said it's literally only Americans are interested in this. Nobody else gives a shit. And I think that's true. And I think even in America, there's a lot of people that don't give a shit. So if you're really trying to do a disinformation thing, I think you need to pick a better topic. So I don't believe that any of those apply here. Then there's the Project Bluebeam. This is a big conspiracy theory. This is also known as the false alien invasion theory. The Project Bluebeam is a conspiracy that says that governments and global elites, the deep state, if you will, are trying to fake an alien invasion or some kind of related religious event using advanced technology that has not been disclosed to establish a one world government and work to destroy traditional religion by putting everybody into sort of like, I guess, a Star Trek universe kind of government where everyone gets along and, everyone's taken care of and nobody has to really work too hard because, you're just taken care of by the government, by the system, which, we've talked about AI and how it could lead to things like this, and maybe it doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but there is concern that this is what they're using this for. I think that that's, again, a tall order. I don't think that you can really argue that this would make sense in the long term, or you could convince enough people of this. Now, this one is where we kind of get into, the next one here is where we kind of get into some of the meat of tonight's show. There's the religious deception theory, and it seems to me that those that do believe that this is some kind of coming disclosure or soft disclosure, this seems to be one that a lot of people in America are buying into. And this is the one that says that that Christians will be, or that they will try to deceive Christians into believing that these aliens or these things that are really demons coming for the end times are really, they're just going to make us believe that they're aliens here to help us and save us, and that the Antichrist is going to present himself as an alien, so that we can sort of be convinced that, oh, the aliens are here to help us, and isn't this cool, when in fact it's really just a demonic deception. Again, because of my theology, I think this is a bunch of bullshit, but we'll talk about it. It overlaps with the demon theory. It's not exactly identical, but it does overlap. It has some overlap because it involves, we both believe that the phenomenon is related to actual demons, not aliens. And they believe that the governments will fake aliens because they're in cahoots with these demons. And then they believe that the fallen powers may manipulate human imagination with technology to create a sophisticated spiritual deception. Okay. The fact of the matter is, there are different views that the Christian needs to take on this. So let's go through that. Okay, the view one, all right? UAPs are ordinary misidentifications. We have to accept that. Even those of us who want to believe that this is something, we have to still accept, so that we're not gullible, that we haven't seen any evidence. Okay, I'm not saying there isn't any, and I'm not saying that lack of evidence means it doesn't exist. I'm not going to go down that route. I mean, that would be foolish for a Christian, because, most of what we believe in doesn't have a whole lot of evidence either, right? So to dismiss anything on the lack of evidence, to say, it's bullshit, is not smart either, because we know that not everything produces evidence, okay? So, but we have to say that because of the lack of evidence, UAPs could be ordinary misidentifications, so albeit quite remarkable misidentifications, but nonetheless, it is possible that these are sightings of drones, aircraft, balloons, planets, satellites, sensor artifacts, atmospheric events of some kind, and even human error. But the theological implication is Christians should not spiritualize every mystery. Okay? We are not here to create something magnificent out of the ordinary. We're here to find truth. What did I say at the beginning of the show? The Christian's job is to the truth first. And that means being open-minded but not stupid. View two, UAPs are secret human technology. That's a possibility, okay? Again, I think it's a stretch, but it is. They are classified U.S. foreign private aerospace programs that we don't know about. The theological implication here is that secrecy, power, and deception, as well as militarization, are moral issues. Even if no aliens exist, these are still moral issues. They are problematic, and they need to be investigated on that basis. Secrecy is not, I would argue, is not the prerogative of the United States government. I believe that that a government that is for the people, by the people, all this shit that they shovel down your throat in grammar school, while you recite the pledge and you have your hand over your heart, and try to make you all patriotic, their goal should be transparency, not secrecy. So I reject on any free government, any government that has a constitution that apparently puts freedom above all things, that secrecy, power, and deception is an acceptable part of government. Don't give me this bullshit about national security. Oh, yeah, security can be used to justify anything. Look at 9/11. Look at all the shit we have to put up with now to fly anywhere because of the national security. We all have to be safe. No, transparency always comes first, even at risk. I will die on that hill. All right, maybe some of you disagree with me. Go ahead, but you're not going to change my mind on that. So it's a moral issue, and that needs to be discussed as a moral issue, even if aliens turn out to be nothing. View 3, UAPs are extraterrestrial life. That's, again, another possibility. This view will say that they're non-human, biological, technological life from somewhere else, and the theological implication here would mean that this challenges the popular imagination more than even core theology. Christianity, though, has room to ask whether God created rational life elsewhere. The Vatican has asked this question. It is not unbecoming of a Christian to ask this question. Okay? UAPs are interdimensional, extra-natural beings. This is where we start getting into where a lot of the Christians that do believe this is happening but don't believe they're aliens because their theology doesn't allow them to accept that there could be life on other planets, they will choose this one because they will say that they're not space aliens. These are beings, some kind of entity crossing between dimensions, different realms or states of reality. And the theological implication there is that it would overlap with angelology, demonology, spirits, principalities, powers, and some of the older cosmologies that we will talk about here shortly. And then there's the view that UAPs are demonic. Vice President Vance reportedly said that he does not think they're aliens but demons. I mean, President of the United States saying this. Okay, I mean, Vice President, rather, sorry, of the United States saying this. This view needs to be treated seriously as a theological interpretation, but it should not be accepted uncritically. Calling them demons is, I guess there's room for that in a Christian discussion. But, simply because something's not proven, something might be strange, does not mean that that must be demons. That there's no room for there to be anything else out there in this vast universe that is beyond comprehension. But let's talk about the demon aspect, because this is the one that most Christians seem to favor, and this is the one that I find the most alarming. Okay? I want to talk to you about what demons really are in the ancient world. So you're going to get a little demonology lesson from me today, something I don't usually talk about outside of my ministry. And I think it's important to kind of discuss this because I actually saw someone on an interview bring up this very point. I thought, you know what? It's time to talk about this because that is important. And this person was relating it back to, how some Christians are talking about this in terms of aliens being really demons deceiving us. There is an older Jewish and Christian adjacent tradition that would say that demons are not fallen angels. In fact, if you go back to the Old Testament writers, the understanding of an evil spirit or demon was not at all a fallen angel. In fact, the fallen angel theology is an invention. Now you might be, Bishop, wait, you use that term. It's even one of your categories in your model. Yeah, I have to use the term because there's no better terminology for it today because no one's going to know what I'm talking about if I use older concepts. So it's just easier to say, well, this is how we understand it theologically today, so this is what we're going to call it. But I will make it very clear right now, I do not believe in fallen angels. Not in that way. There is such a thing as what we would describe that way, but it is not this war in heaven and all these angels were cast down to the earth. That was not believed in the ancient world. That was invented and became a thing. Enoch kind of helped, but Enoch also ironically gives us a picture of what was believed. So what are demons? When you hear Jesus casting out demons in the New Testament, what was the people of his time understanding that to be? They weren't fallen angels. Okay? The belief was that at the time, remember that whole thing in the book of Genesis where the sons of God came down and copulated with the daughters of man and created, or they were called the Watchers. They created the Nephilim, right? And they were like giants, right? And then, of course, this didn't work out too well. So God sends the flood to wipe them all and destroy them. But because they were Nephilim, they had the DNA of the Watchers. They couldn't be destroyed. Bodies could, but their spirits remained. And so the belief was that the demons that were on the earth were the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And that's what the ancients believed the demons to be. Not monsters, or maybe you could say the Nephilim are monsters, but not monsters in the sense of these angels that fought God and lost and ended up here. This was a completely different thing. The other problem with the understanding of this is that we know from Jesus' own teaching that angels are not really male or female. So therefore, the idea that angels could come down to earth and have sex with human females and produce offspring goes against everything that we understand angels to be in the New Testament. So we can't use that claim either. So there are people that are saying that this Enochian tradition is the justification for these UAPs. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I mean, I always say, why would demons need a spacecraft, right? But the idea here is that it's a deception. They believe that they're trying to deceive. Now, if you believe that the devil still has power and that, he can still win, that the cross meant nothing, then I guess you could argue this point. I, for one, know that the cross defeated Satan and he has no power anymore. There's not enough power in someone that's defeated to be able to create this kind of deception. So I don't buy it on the basis that it doesn't make sense to anything else that we as Christians should believe. But either way, it is something that is talked about, okay? Now, understand that there is not a clean, systematic origin story for demons in the Bible. All right. The idea that fallen angels became demons is a doctrine built from scattered passages and much later theological synthesis. It was constructed. It was not a definitive doctrine that was absolute. Not at all. Okay. Genesis chapter 6, Jude, 2 Peter, Revelation, chapter 12, Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28, Luke 10, all stitched together a full demonology that now we say, oh, this is the truth. But the pieces don't automatically produce a singular clear doctrine like we think it does. We take that for granted because the church teaches it as it does. And see, this is where, look, I'm not going to say the church is wrong, but I am going to say that sometimes it acts less enlightened than it should. And this is one of those times. Not everybody. My mentor didn't, and he was a Roman Catholic priest. And certainly he understood, the folly to this, but it is what it is, and this becomes problems. Again, you heard me talk about the concept of Yetzirah and how we really didn't have a all evil cosmic devil figure in the Old Testament, or the ancient Jews didn't even understand it, still don't. That didn't come about until later. And it was a reconstruction. Call it a model doesn't mean it's completely wrong. It just means that you have to understand there's a difference between an allegorical model to comprehend something and what is actually happening. Those are usually two very different things, but both are true. It's just one is a definitive answer and one is an allegorical answer. But they're both true. So it's not that the church is teaching lies. It's that it's not giving you, it's giving you more truth than fact. And sometimes these things require fact. I think in our day and age, we need more fact than truth. If that makes sense. What does the Vatican say about this? Well, the Roman Catholic Church has not dogmatically defined whether extraterrestrial life exists. The safest Catholic position for a Catholic to hold is that it's not whether aliens are real or not, or even if aliens are impossible. The existence of extraterrestrial life is scientifically unresolved and theologically permissible. That's how a Catholic should handle this. This is what the Church of Rome teaches the existence of extraterrestrial life is scientifically unresolved and theologically permissible. There is nothing in Christian theological understanding that contradicts the existence of life on other planets, or even a galactic federation, as that Israeli defense minister suggested. The church's magisterium has not issued any binding doctrine on alien life, but instead Catholic thinkers, Vatican astronomers, papal remarks have treated the question as open speculation. Okay? The Vatican Observatory has a cautious position on this. It emphasizes no conclusive evidence proves that there's life beyond Earth. The theological framing they use is that God created an orderly universe. Science investigates how that universe works. The Bible teaches who created it. Science studies how creation operates. Therefore, discovering extraterrestrial life would not threaten Catholic faith whatsoever, because all it would do is show more about how God's creation works. And it's God's prerogative if he wants to create other intelligent life. That's not our business. Okay? And it's a bit egocentric to think that we would really be the only ones. So the Vatican holds this position that the extraterrestrial life, the question of it, belongs to science, not theology. Theology can ask what that would mean if it's discovered, but not prove it. So it yields to science for that answer. The director, Jose Gabriel Funes, was the director of the Vatican Observatory, argued that alien life is not contrary to the Catholic faith. All right, there are many creatures on Earth. Why could there not be many creatures in the cosmos? God's creative freedom is not limited by our expectations. If God created rational beings elsewhere, they'd be part of that creation too. No different. He even uses the phrase extraterrestrial brothers and sisters as a theological analogy. But that does not mean that the Vatican has confirmed aliens, as some people have suggested. Pope Francis once hypothetically talked about whether Martians should be baptized. Of course, he wasn't talking about actual inhabitants of the planet Mars, but rather space or aliens or extraterrestrials. And the point that he was making, whether you like Pope Francis or not, was that it's not a doctrine about aliens. It's more about ecclesial openness. Okay, Christians should not close the door to something that the Holy Spirit may be drawing us to, well, like what we were talking about in the first hour here. But he's given rhetorical arguments about it, or did when he was alive. But the Pope has never said that they are demonic, nor has he said that it's incompatible with the Catholic faith. All right. The 2009 Vatican Astrobiology Conference confirmed, that there are exoplanets and discussed planetary habitability and extraterrestrial intelligence. All of this was discussed openly. The one perspective that Catholics should maintain, are that these, if they are found to exist, we're not to treat them as gods because they're not gods. We're not to treat them as angels because that's not been confirmed, nor demons because that's not been confirmed. But we can say that they are contingent on being created by God because they are here as part of God's creation. So that we can claim. So the first theological move is about creation, not demonology. So it's very irresponsible, particularly for a vice president, to make such a radically ridiculous claim as, I think they're demons. Another interesting thing is, would aliens have original sin? Is it just human beings that fell? Well, it depends on your cosmology here. If it affected the whole cosmos, well, how far does that extend? Is it just this galaxy? Is it, who knows? I don't know. No one knows. We haven't gotten enough information yet. But it would depend on if these aliens are rational. Are they embodied? Do they have moral freedom? Do they have souls? Are they subject to sin and death in the same way that we are? And therefore, would they need redemption if all those things apply. The church has no formal answer to this because there's been no confirmed extraterrestrial beings to evaluate. That has to come from science, not the church. Nor should the church say, these are demons, because you don't have the information. You don't make claims about something like that when you can't possibly know it. And we don't even know if Christ's redemption would apply to them, or they need to, because they might not be fallen. Okay, there's no settled, and that would determine whether or not they're baptized. But the Catholic Church has not taught that they're demons, so I don't know where Vance is getting this crap from. The church has not dogmatized alien life, but it does permit theological speculation, and we already know that they've said that they're open to the possibility. So that's kind of, I think, in a nutshell, the core of what we need to talk about here in this next hour. So if you want, you can call into the show at 207-544-1983, and we'll take you on after the break. But we're going to take our next top of the hour break here. And when we come back, your questions and discussion with our panel, April and Father Chris, and I'm sure Jamie has some questions too or comments. Don't go away.
San Francisco, I was born there. Francisco.
Mr. Angel.
San Francisco. Born there. Born there. San Francisco. Presto change.
Captain Disco. Dharma Kinjalad at Tanagra. Mr. Angel.
San Francisco. I was born there. I was born there. Born there. Born there. San Francisco. Presto change.
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Captain Disco. Dharma Kinjalad at Tanagra.
I was born there. San Francisco.
Mr. Angel.
San Francisco. Born there. Born there. San Francisco. Presto change.
Captain Disco. Dharma Kinjalad at Tanagra. Dharma Kinjalad at Tanagra.
His arms open.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. I'm exhausted after that presentation, but there's a lot to kind of unpack from that, so we're going to spend this next hour doing that. You can call into the show at 207-544-1983 if you'd like to talk to us about it, or you can ask your questions or leave your comments in the various chat rooms around the internet, be it Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. Okay? YouTube's the primary chat, so join us over there. It's probably better. And when we come back here, we'll be hearing what the panel has to say. And I got one closing thing to also say, just to kind of make sure that everybody's clear on everything, okay? We'll be doing that when we come right back here in just a moment. Don't go away. I want to make sure that everybody understands my perspective on this entire issue, because what you have seen, I mean, the focus here, particularly from the Christian vantage point, is, of course, this idea that people are claiming this is the alien, this is the demonic deception, it's the end times, this is proof of it, one world government, all this stuff, okay? This is the Antichrist, okay, I reject all that. I made that clear. I'm not apologizing for it, and I don't think I should have to, because the Roman Catholic Church agrees with me on this. All right, I've taught you what they have taught on this subject. They are open to the idea of alien life, and they don't see it as demons, okay, and nor should you. The reality is, here is what I did bring you down that little tangent on demonology, is to show you how much people have over the millennia tried to understand this thing called evil. So we have Yetzirah, which contradicts largely this idea of the Nephilim being washed away in the flood and being these disembodied spirits that now torment human beings in the form of these evil demonic entities. And then you have, of course, the fallen angel and the war in heaven to describe it. And then we have Lucifer and Satan and, and all of this stuff. And then, I see the church, or I shouldn't say the church, I see people in the church inventing this new construct, aliens are demons now, as just more of the same. So I think the reality is that what we can take away is that nobody knows what the hell a demon is, because they keep applying it to all these different ideas that don't make any sense. None of them make sense. War in heaven doesn't make sense, okay? Because we've already established the nature of heaven. It's perfect, okay? It's perfect. You're not going to have a war in a perfect place, okay? And you're not going to also have a war in time, outside of time. That's ridiculous. The real idea here is to understand, well, where did it come from? And so we find our scapegoats and we create these archetypes to try to make sense of it. In reality, where does it come from? It comes as a side effect of the most sacred thing in the world that God gave us, and that's freedom. That's where it comes from. So if you want to call it a fallen angel, that's fine. There's a theological place for that. If you want to call it the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, well, there's a historical place for that. If you want to call it the Yetzirah, there's a good psychological place for that. If you want to call them aliens, well, there's a really stupid place for that. But the fact of the matter is, these are just all products of the same lack of knowledge, the same ignorance. And you know why? Because the Bible really doesn't care about whether or not you know about demons. What the Bible cares about is that you know how to find salvation. And that is within yourself, using your own faculties of volition to do. And that's the only thing the Christian need worry about. So, we can get into all these complex things, all these crazy stories. This is just another one, invented again by Christians. Okay? No surprise. No surprise that the aliens have to be demons. But I wanted to make sure that that's clear, because I said earlier that I really don't believe in fallen angels, because I don't believe in that story of the war in heaven. I think that was just a mythology, an allegory for something that we can't understand. Okay? But it doesn't mean it happened that way. There is a place for it, because I can say that there are forces, and celestial forces, that fall through us and lead to that Yetzirah effect that happens on a psychological level, and that, all the evil that I've ever seen was never external. It was always coming from the heart of man, or the broken heart of man, I should say, to do the wrong thing. And that responsibility is man's alone to bear. Okay? And thank God we have Christ to save us from it. But, that's where I'm going to leave it. And now I'm going to open it up to the panel. So, Jamie, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on everything that we've talked about here tonight? Because that was a doozy of a show.
Aliens aren't really my thing, so to speak, but I do have definitely a curious pull towards that whole phenomenon, especially lately. What's got me really riled up is all the disappearances of these scientists and these assistants going back, 4 or 5 years now, and they just found another one dead in a Carson National Forest, in a place where they had already searched when she went missing last June. Mm-hmm. And her name is Melissa Casillas. Sorry if I messed up her name.
I butcher names all the time, so don't feel bad.
She worked for Los Alamos, and she disappeared about the same time another person that worked at Los Alamos, Anthony Chavez, passed away, disappeared as well. Mm-hmm. And they're finding more and more clues out about, she was last seen on the road with a backpack, like she was going for a hike, entering into the forest. But when they found her, she had none of her personal items with her, and her phone had already been factory reset. So what gives? Now, obviously, there's a lot of decomposition going on, and there was a weapon, a gun found by the body. I don't know any other details, but, they talked about it real quick on the news cycle, and now I haven't heard anything else about it. But there's like 10 that have been found dead now, and like another 6 or 7 or 8 that just ghosted, just disappeared. I want to know what's going on with that.
I mean, there's, like I said,
there's something nefarious going on, whether it's governments, whether it's an alien Galactic Federation, whatever, I don't know. I have not had any experiences that I can recall with any kind of alien phenomenon. I did have a few very weird dreams when I was a lot younger that kind of stuck with me, but nothing I can equate to actual alien abduction style contact.
Well, there's some people that say that all paranormal phenomena are actually extraterrestrial in nature. That the hauntings are basically just these that they're able to cloak themselves.
Not buying that.
Yeah.
No, not buying that. But I think
there are those that say it, though.
I think it's a mix of all of your theories that you put out there. I think it might be a mix.
The truth is always somewhere in between.
Yeah, somewhere in between. Yeah. But I don't think that aliens are demons. That's never made sense to me, even before I got back involved with the church. But I think there's definitely something going on. What it is, I'm like everybody else. Just show us already.
Yeah, show us. Prove it. If you've got the proof, then prove it. If you really do care and say it's time for the public to know, as Trump has alluded to, then do it.
Yeah, just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off, and we'll figure it out. We're not all that stupid.
Because I know that the concern is how is this going to change Christian civilization? Well, again, it comes back to, if you're very much a literalist, a fundamentalist, a fundy, where you think that God literally created the heavens and the earth in 7 days, and that we are the only intelligent life that he's created outside of angels, well, then I could see where this could really shatter your worldview. But that's not an appropriate theological position. That's one that you've adopted as a deviation from the original theological position. So that's why I started this off with, or I finished this off, I should say, with how the church it talks about extraterrestrial life, and it does it in the affirmative. It doesn't do it in a negative way. It doesn't say, oh, we need to be wary of this, we need to be afraid of this, and it doesn't talk about them in an evil sense. It says it very clearly that this is an exploration of science. So what's wrong with that, right? Father Chris, your thoughts on this? I know that you say that outside the United States, it's not a popular topic, and yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, so the grumpy answer is for me to say I really don't lose sleep over UAPs, but actually. I said that last week, and Americans seem to be obsessed with this stuff and no one else.
Yeah.
The cynic in me says whenever there's some difficult politics going on, this tends to come out. Okay. So I'm not interested in the theological reflections of the vice president. Being vice president doesn't qualify you to speak on anything other than the political circumstances in which you find yourself. This is a frequent complaint of Thomas Sowell, my great hero, that people politicians are generally not experts in anything. But anyway,
That's true.
even if you are an expert in one particular thing, that doesn't mean that you're an expert in everything. And people like Noam Chomsky, for example, the famous example Thomas Sowell gives. He's an expert linguist, and I'm not a linguist. I'm told he's actually brilliant in the field of linguistics. But when he starts talking about socialism and communism, he's outside of his field, right? So I do think there's an element of, look over here. America is particularly vulnerable. I think, so to be more genuine, I'm more interested in why Americans are so drawn to that, because that's something that's beyond doubt, right? So, and that's a psychological phenomenon that is not happening because Americans are somehow peculiarly genetically predisposed to this. It's because of the environment in which you find yourselves. And so and I think there's several things interacting. One is that political one of, look over here because this is bad for me in the polls, so look at this other thing. It's always going to be I think part of the appeal to the MAGA base was to say, I'm going to reveal the secrets, the JFK files, wherever it's going to be, because there's all these conspiracies. The country that produced Hollywood, it shouldn't surprise us that you're really interested in stories, and I don't mean this negatively. I'm saying this positively. The nation that could generate the power of Hollywood is a nation that is curious about stories, and that's a good and a bad thing, right? And so that's part of it. I think also as religiosity has declined in the whole Western world, including America, less so in America than other parts of the world, believe it or not. As that's declined, people are looking elsewhere. So, I'm interested in the question, and you'll hear the biblical allegory to this. Why do you look to the skies? We've just celebrated Pentecost, the Ascension. The Ascension, our Lord goes up to be with the Father forever, uniting humanity with the Godhead. And the apostles are looking at towards the sky as he vanishes, and the angel tells them, why do you look to the sky? Now they've got a sense of loss. They're losing the Jesus that's been imminently present to them. They're gazing with a sense of loss. I think something's been lost in our culture, so people are looking to the sky for the answer. And there's a sort of Jung, is it the mandala effect? Like Jung has something for this, that when a culture loses its meta narratives, it starts to look for other ones, and it tends to look to the skies. And so we've got this sort of almost secular eschatology of looking for, the United Federation of Planets to come down and sort us all out. And also I think you can't remove from, none of us can remove from ourselves, and I'm a Trekkie too, right? None of us can remove from ourselves the effects of story on false memory. Like we can have memories that we absolutely think are real, but false memory syndrome is a real problem. And you hear this, I can hear this reflected in how you're describing someone that's talking about, lizard life forms, and you said it yourself. Isn't this so we've got the Kardashians, we've got the we've got the Vulcans, we've got it's actually impossible to separate the fact that these stories are in the zeitgeist, are out there, from the influence it has on our psychology. So, but here's my kind of conclusion to that. And I'm not hostile. I don't know. Everything you said theologically, I agree with you. The church is ambivalent about whether there's life on other planets. It wouldn't surprise us, given that God loves life. And so...
But he created a lot of space, didn't he?
Yeah, and it wouldn't change the gospel one iota.
Yeah.
Also, it wouldn't be impossible to say, well, actually, God has given human life this unique dignity because he wanted to, and he became a human. So... But those things are just as true as one another. Like we cannot know the answer to that question. There's also the physics question. Is it, if there, given that the space in between the Goldilocks planets where there can be life is so vast, it's so vast as to make it at the moment what we know of physics impossible to make that journey anyway. So we can just gaze at one another through the stars. That's possible too. But here's my real, where I think this is a massive distraction for people of faith, for Christians in particular, is why do you gaze to the skies looking for salvation? Salvation is behind a locked door in a golden box in every church. Yeah. You can gaze upon the Blessed Sacrament, which is God's presence here for us, and we don't need to find that in the cosmos. It's here. God is both transcendent and immanent. But for the Christian, we're never to lose sight of the transcendence of God. But God has immanently inhabited human nature and continues to be present.
I don't think Christians are. I'm not as worried about Christians as being looking to these things as solutions.
No, you're right.
They seem to be in the opposite camp.
Yeah,
the solutions seem to be from the more agnostic people that want to see it.
I missed a link. The link is that the Western world is the Christian world. I'm sorry if that upsets people, but all of the institutions of the Western world, the remnant of them, parliaments and this sort of thing, they are all Christian. I'm even not that keen on the word Judeo-Christian. They are Christian institutions. Not because I don't like Jews, because I do. They're my brothers. But this is a Christian phenomenon that has generated the West. And so what we have is in the West, we have some people that are migrants that are basically relocated, but their entire culture is still wherever the origin of that culture was. That exists. But the vast majority of people that live in Western countries are either believing Christians still, or they are post-Christians. And so you're right. It's the post-Christians that are gazing to the skies, looking for salvation. And other than the sort of, I also think with the way drone technology is now available to everybody, things don't become available to everybody until quite some time after they've been developed by the special people. So do I doubt that there's unidentified objects in the skies? What they are, who knows? I mean, and to a certain extent, it's unknowable, and because of that, it's open to a mystery tradition because it's unanswerable.
Well, what we have are I think what people focus on at this point is what we do have, the information we do have to work with. Okay, so what we have are some released government videos that do show craft doing things that seem to defy our understanding of physics. So there's that element. The second element is high-ranking government officials, politicians, news sources that are reporting remarkable claims like 4 species being recovered, galactic federations, and then, of course, talking about, this came out recently, I didn't get into it in the presentation, but maybe I should mention it. There's another guy, I don't know his name right off the top of my head, but he's reporting that one of the concerns that are keeping the government, his argument for why this is still being held back secretly, because why the secrecy? Everyone wants to know why the secrecy. Is that the United States government, this is his claim, the United States government, and others have claimed this too, so it's not just him. The United States government made a deal back in the 40s at the Roswell crash, sometime around that event, and that the Roswell was about investigating the first release of nuclear weapons, which might explain why America has a particular interest to alien beings, because we're the ones that used the bomb. And that's the time where you come and be like, okay, now they can destroy themselves. Maybe we need to intervene. They have
France have set off nuclear bombs in the South Pacific.
Well, I know, but when it was first detonated, it was very close to the Roswell incident. Okay, it was a short time frame, and then an explosion of technology after that. So this is explained by some people that claim to know these things. Again, it's always like second or third information, but
without evidence.
Yeah, and of course the evidence. Well, if it's all being held secretly, how can you get the evidence? But this is the claim, and that is that a deal was made. You can abduct a certain number of citizens for genetic purposes, and you got to give us access to advances in technology over time. And this is where the explosion of the computer age came from.
This theory.
Yeah, that's a theory. Now, what's interesting about that is now this person is also claiming, again, another high-ranking person. I can't remember his name. I'm so sorry. I didn't prepare for this part of it because it's so new. He's saying that hybridization has indeed occurred, and even implied that the planet was seeded. So when the question came in last week or the week before, I think it was last week, when someone asked, why would this be such a problem for Christians? This would be another element of concern for a government releasing this information, that first of all, you got to be like, you made a deal and we weren't a part of it. What gave you the right to give people's lives away, if that's true? Second of all, so you'd want to hide that. And second of all, if they seeded the planet, well, then that again goes against fundamentalist ideas that God put us here. Because Bible doesn't say that God put us here through someone else.
I've worked in politics for a very long time. Mm-hmm. You can't keep anything secret in a government. I mean, this is the main reason I think the secrecy thing, because what they present is an unverifiable hypothesis, right? Mm-hmm. Unfalsifiable too. A senior person says, I've seen things. It's like, well, okay, but
you can if you're killing everybody. Which is happening, right?
Honestly, nobody can keep a secret. Have you not noticed? Human beings are shit at keeping secrets, and so I that's what doesn't ring true with me.
But you can't equate a secret though to release of concrete evidence. You could I think a government is more than capable of withholding the evidence. But maybe, someone's going to talk. People have talked. That's the whole point of this. And for the last several decades, people have been talking, but everyone's saying, oh, they're full of shit because there's no proof. But I think the government is more than capable of holding the evidence. Maybe not letting the secret out, but they don't care if the secret gets out because nobody can prove it, and they look like fools when they talk about it. So
maybe, I don't know. I just for me, it just, I think having a healthy dose of skepticism about these claims is the way to go. I just think
skepticism's fine. I don't think closed-mindedness works.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's improbable.
April, what are your thoughts on all this?
So, I've got quite a few thoughts actually, but we do have a couple of questions from the audience. I don't know if you want to do those first.
we can do them. Sure.
Okay.
Just save time for yourself. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
One of the questions that was asked is, there was confusion about when you said demons weren't fallen angels, and that was asked by Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, look, the traditional view is in Christianity, not so much in Catholicism to the same degree, but in most of the Christian world, the idea is that God created angels and human beings, and that's it. That's it. I mean, well, animals, of course, but as far as intelligent life, only angels and humans. So the idea of a demon had to get attached to this war in heaven, where the angels that rebelled became the demons. That's not the original Judeo-Christian understanding. As I said, the original understanding was that the demons were the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim after the flood wiped them out. And that would have been the one that was operating at the time that Jesus was doing exorcism. He was casting out Nephilim. And then prior to that, it would have just been evil spirits in a more generic sense, but not in the sense of being like an angel that fell. I mean, the Enochian concept was, even though it's not canon, it had a significant impact on Christian thought, and people ran with it because they were trying to find a model that made sense to all of this. But that doesn't mean, though, and I say this carefully, that doesn't mean that we can't use the concept of a fallen angel and maybe just use that term for the sake of clarity or for the sake of convenience. Because in my work as an exorcist, we do encounter what can only be described that way, but the metaphysics behind it, I would define vastly differently than Enoch would have defined it, and that's the difference. So, but no, not all demons are angels, and that's why I have the 4 categories of demons. The primary one, of course, what I call the true demon, is the fallen angel category. But we have elementals, which are incorporeal beings that are part of creation. We just can't see them, so we don't think about them, and we think they're myths. And that would be like the realm of fairies, gnomes, jinn, that kind of thing. And then you have thought forms, which are the projections of the human psyche. This is where the Yetzer Hara becomes an important part of understanding how demons work. And that's really where I think the angels fall through, but I'll talk about that in a moment if someone wants me to explain it better. And then there's the wrathful spirit, which we talked about a lot last week. The idea of a person that has not prepared himself for death, doesn't have grace to move forward, and gets stuck. They get scared, they get stuck, and they stay, and they degrade. And as they degrade, they become more and more resembling a demon in behavior. And that's 4 categories of demons, and exorcists have to deal with all 4 of them. But only one category would even be classifiable theologically as a fallen angel. And even that I hold with much reservation, because I don't think the Enochian model is as accurate as other ones. But that's just my preference. I wouldn't say that it's wrong. I would just say it's incomplete.
Okay. I think Jennifer understood that and appreciated that explanation.
Okay, cool. Okay. I want to be clear, and I'm glad you guys are asking questions, because I know that sometimes I can talk faster. I'm thinking even faster, and not every word comes out. And I want to make sure everyone understands what I'm saying here, because I'm really not being as controversial as it might sound.
Okay, so another question that was asked, or I guess maybe a comment, why can't they tell us what's really going on at Area 51? And that was done by Mostly Sunny.
Well, the recent reports are saying that Area 51 is really a ruse. That nothing was ever really there.
There's a new Area 51 that's relocated. They're not doing the same things they were doing at Area 51.
Yeah.
It's been shut down for a while as far as top secret military testing.
I would say my speculation on this is related back to what I said before. If the government is indeed, just as one theory, it's theory. There's no fact here. This is just what people say. If it's true that aliens have used hybridization and planted us here, seeded this planet, and if the government made deals with them to allow them to use citizens in this way, well, that's a big motivation to hide whatever you might have regarding this, because, I mean, how the hell could you ever let that out once it's been done? Even if no one alive today is responsible. I mean, this could have been made decisions back in the 40s. Most of those people are probably dead, okay? And now the government has to maintain this secrecy because it would make the entire system look so corrupt. Why would you want to talk about? Why? I mean, you couldn't. You could never release that in a way that would sound appropriate. So maybe it's just not enough time from the 1940s to be able to, and that's just one speculation. I'm not saying that's the right one. We don't know why they would keep it a secret. There are people who are saying, just show it. Just, what are you afraid of? I mean, everyone's ready. I mean, we're ready. I'm ready.
But this is a very undemanding closed system, isn't it? Unverifiable, speculation, unverifiable. And so, like, there's no sacrifice involved. So it's not hard to see how this can replace Christianity as somebody's preoccupation, because it's very undemanding. You just go, well, governments cover things up. Yeah, they do. They've covered this up, and we can't know and we can't not know.
Yeah.
So I can spend all my time running around this loop.
Until they give us more and give us something more concrete.
My life. I don't know.
Gotta feed the baby.
Yeah, I think it's a massive distraction, personally. But
from what? What do you think they're distracting from? Financial collapse? Some kind of.
Also, name your list. Governments have lots of things to worry about. But also, there's the sort of beyond the humanity of governments and people. There's a spiritual war going on, and what better way to have everybody to move everybody away from seriously engaging with the gospel and the revelation of God in man than having them endlessly speculating about something that there is no end to the speculation of.
No, maybe, but if you have the vice president saying they're demons, that might draw more people to the Bible.
Well, of course it does, But and like I said, that politicians have their reasons for saying, "Look over there."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that you would need, as I said at the beginning of the second hour, rather, I think you're going to need something a lot more convincing than that as a distraction, because I don't think there's enough people interested in this yet to be distracted from it. I really don't. I think there's still a very small number of people that are interested.
There's enough that you have a program called Star Trek, that you have the X-Files, that you have, there's enough interest in that in general.
Well, from a sci-fi,
there's a whole industry.
Yeah, from sci-fi, but I don't know if it's distracting enough from a like a practical point of view to say, like, I'm not going to pay attention to what they're doing with our tax dollars because there's too many alien stories to think about. I don't know if that's enough. For some people, I think it could be. If you're really like head over heels for the paranormal, that might distract you. But I really don't think the average person is convinced enough yet. There hasn't been enough given to us to be.
Well, there's an above average interest of Americans, though.
Yeah, so, but that could be explained.
Phenomenon that I'm interested in.
Well, I think that could be explained by the fact that we had the Roswell mystery. And I think that never left. People have wanted to know what that is.
But we could be confusing cause and effect.
What do you mean?
In other words,
that was the origin of the flying saucer. We never really had anything that prior to the Roswell.
But what I'm saying is that disposition towards these sorts of stories is what generated the Roswell story.
I'm not sure I don't know if that's true. I want to say, though, that, there was obviously War of the Worlds, right? That was probably a cultural phenomenon that scared people for real. That's
the Second World War.
Same time period as Roswell, as well as the detonation of the atom bomb. So. It all is kind of in that same category, but then you have the 1950s where the flying saucer sightings, particularly around nuclear sites or started to become a regular occurrence.
So sightings of things in the air above areas where technological progress was going on.
Right. But you're talking about. But it's not just like lights in the sky that could be, that's just a planet, or it's just an airplane or something. You're talking about, like I said, triangular objects. The thing that my father saw is not the first time somebody has seen something like this. For an object the size of a football field to just go from hovering with no sound to instantly gone, there's no explanation for that technologically.
Sightings have been going back hundreds of years.
Yes,
it's been documented, and you can't discount the experiences people have had.
So
thousands
people
upon
are saying
thousands
something.
of people who don't know each other.
I guess my question is more psychologically based. Is why the absolute fascination with this stuff? I just think
I really think it's the government cover-up. And that's something that's an American phenomenon.
People
largely
love a juicy.
You have the
mystery.
most open government in the world.
Not really, though.
I don't know
I
about
think
that.
I think we actually have one of the most closed. I mean, honestly, I mean, we rival China with our secrets. I really think we do. You know, they like to talk talk about freedom and transparency, but they're
there's also a strategic advantage in a nation that has always seen itself in a battle for survival. At the very beginning, it was from the British returning.
Yeah.
Then it became, you know, the Russians and now the Chinese. So, you know, there is a sort of paranoia about American identity or survival, which, you know, there is a strategic reason to have these sorts of questions being fed by politicians to say to China, be careful, we might have these experimental things you don't know about.
I mean, there's something to that. Although, again, the things that are seen, like if it was just drone, like remember those drones that were plaguing the sky, like
started up in New Jersey years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that I don't think that was necessarily UFO or alien or any of this UAP stuff. I think that was drone technology. It didn't have any reports of anything being spectacular, but I mean, when you download those files, and I'm sure they're available in Australia as much as they are here, you just go to that, what is it, UFO? No, it's war.gov/UAP, I think, or...
No, I mean, I know more about UFO than I'm letting on. I mean, I have seen a lot of these things. And I mean, look, I don't doubt the credulity of a lot of these Navy pilots. You know, I've no reason to doubt them. I'm not trying to make that point. I'm just saying that the essence of government secrecy, I think, when it comes to America, is it's a way of it's kind of an intimidation tactic for the rest of the world.
No, there's definitely that element. Oh, no question about that. And maybe
that
was
an explanation for why there is secrecy within the American.
To answer the question of the viewer, that's definitely a good explanation and a very practical one, and one that I
by the way,
tend
not
to
even
agree
an
with.
evil one. It's not necessarily bad for a government to do that. Like, you know, if it does serve a purpose of preventing attacks and, you know, keeping you, but.
I think I'd rather be less safe and know. I think I'd rather be less safe and know what the hell my government's doing and spending my money than to be really safe and not know.
But we're on the freedom end of the spectrum, safety or freedom, right? We're on the freedom end.
I am, definitely.
Most people aren't. I
know. That's the problem.
They want to be comfortable.
That's the problem with this country. And that's the problem with most of the Western world today.
It's democratic. They're acting democratically because most people are on the safety end. So...
Yeah, maybe they deserve to lose the rights of the Constitution then, I think. Maybe they deserve it. Maybe they get what they deserve. Maybe if they don't like Trump, maybe they got what they deserved. You know, that's kind of the way I look at it. April, I don't want you to be overshadowed by us talking on our tangents. So go ahead. If you have any ideas on this yourself, because I know that you said you had some questions.
Well, first thing, he was talking about the triangle ship that you or your dad saw. Mm-hmm. I also had an experience where I saw one. I was coming home from work, and at the time I lived about 45 minutes from my job was 45 minutes from my home. And so when we would go home, some of myself and some of my staff would like carpool, or not carpool, but caravan. And as we were going down the interstate, mind you, you could see like some lights from the sky, and you could see stars like you normally would see as you're driving. All at once, you saw this massive, I don't even know what it was, but it just went over the top of the vehicles. And if I were standing outside on top of my vehicle, I probably could have reached up and touched it. That's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And it totally blotted out everything. And the reason I know I didn't imagine it is because my employee that was following me called and said, "Did you just see that?" Mm. And so we both saw that. And I would say that it was as big as this, football field sized thing you're talking about. So I can, confirm it as much as possible that there is something like that. And then
it's so hard to know though how far away something is or how fast it's going. It's very difficult to, unless something's right next to you, it's very, very difficult to do that.
Well, yeah, I agree. I didn't know for sure how fast it was going or how far away it was, but I could. It was close enough that it was blotting out everything over me and several vehicles in front of me. And then kind of to speak to what you were saying, Father Chris, about what's the psychological fascination with all this, my opinion would be people are looking for some kind, it's almost like they're on a spiritual quest, and
Absolutely.
they're trying to find something. And they're, maybe they're not filling it with church and religion, but they're trying to fill it with something. That would be my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Father Chris's point. Yeah, that's his point.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think there's some of those that do fall into that category.
And I think they're wasting their time. Not. I mean, in terms of trying to find internal spiritual fulfillment. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so I think they're wasting their time.
Yeah.
And it's harder to engage it in the ego reducing effort of becoming a Christian. That's harder to do.
Let me give you two sightings, April, and for the rest of the panel and the audience as well. You'll find this. I've never talked about these before. I don't even think Jamie has heard these stories.
Ooh, dish.
So these are new ones. UFO encounters that I've had in my life. Okay, two of them. I've already told you the first one. There've been several others, but these are the two most interesting, in my opinion. The first, I'll go with the older one first. So this one would have been about 1991 when this happened. In fact, it was 1991. I remember that very specific because I know where I was in 1991. And this would have been in Massachusetts. And we were, again, visiting. And it was actually one of the times around that mall. Yeah. And we were coming back from Cape, no, it was Plymouth. We were coming back from Plymouth. We went to Plymouth Rock, and we were coming back from there. And as we were coming back on the highway, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon, bright, sunny day with cumulus clouds everywhere. And I was the driver, and we were just driving down that highway. And I looked up at the sky because something up there caught my interest. I saw movement. So I looked up to see what the movement was. And there were two very large cumulus clouds right on either side of the sky. And there was this white cloud-looking oblong kind of almost like a curvy cylinder that looked like it, kind of like a cloud, but had metallic definition underneath it. And it would go to the other cloud, and then it would swoop back to the other cloud, and it would swoop back to the other cloud. And then it came out between the two, and it changed shape, and it immediately went behind the other cloud. And it just kept doing this for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then it just shot up. And I was like, what the hell was that? And everyone in the car saw it. Again, if that was some kind of secret U.S. technology, that's pretty impressive, because I would imagine the speed of going up had to have been tens of thousands of miles per hour from basically a stationary position. So that was 91. And then the next one would have been 1997. 1997, back in Florida. I had to wake up early in the morning. So it was about 4 a.m. to go bring my friends to the airport. He was a meteorologist. Right, he was a local meteorologist. He was the I forget which channel it was, but the local meteorologist for our city, and his wife. I was bringing them to the airport. I used to his wife was my uncle's hygienist, and she they had 3 kids, and sometimes I would watch their kids when I was in college, and so I was bringing them to the airport at by this point, it would have been about 5 a.m. And so we were driving on a dark road towards the airport when all of a sudden the meteorologist who's sitting in the front seat looks up and he goes, look at that. What is that? What is that? I'm like, and I looked up. I'm like, what does he see? And there was this streak in the sky of bright light, almost rainbow kind of effect. Okay, it was a clear night, not a cloud in the sky. This streak almost looked like a comet, but it wasn't moving. And then at the end of this streak of light, this bubble formed. And it kept forming in almost like a cloud-like way, but it wasn't a cloud because it was holding together in almost a perfect sphere. And then in the center of it, it got dark and it opened up and this little tiny light popped out of it and then shot up into the sky. And we saw that. And being a meteorologist, he's interested in the sky.
That's a new one.
Yeah. And so he freaked out. The guy was freaking out. Okay. And so he calls his friend at West Palm Beach Tower, the tower for the airport, the same airport that Trump's always flying into when he goes to Mar-a-Lago. He calls his friend over there at the tower. And he's very quiet. Very quiet. And he went from like almost hysterical to very quiet. And then he talked with him, or he listened to him. He didn't really say much. It was basically, yeah. And then he hung up, and I said, so what did he say? Yeah, it was nothing.
Listen to me very carefully. Yeah. You did not see anything.
I said, well, he must have said it was nothing. And he got almost kind of firm about it. And I'm like, okay, I guess he doesn't want to talk about whatever was said. That was a long conversation with you saying nothing for it to have been nothing. So I always wondered about that. But that happened. That actually happened. And these are just some of the stories I could tell you about things that happened in my life regarding this. So look, it's not a question of whether or not UAPs exist because we all know they do. All right. We've seen the releases. We've had our experiences. April, you've had yours. I've had mine. And I find the triangular shape to be particularly interesting because one of the releases was from NASA during the moon missions, the Apollo missions, and one has a triangular shape in the air on the moon on the moon, right above the moon's surface, where they took a picture of it. And it's been confirmed not to be glare, that it's a solid object. What the hell is a triangular shape doing on the moon in the 1960s, 70s? Please. I mean, there's something going on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
I agree with that.
It's extraterrestrials per se, but there's something
the
going
is out
on.
There.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is out there somewhere, right? I don't know. I mean, I just say that, okay, I can't tell you what it is, but I can definitely tell you that something is going on.
Yeah.
And it is definitely significant, whether you want to be a skeptic or, completely open to this and believe, yeah, there's definitely aliens, regardless of which side of that spectrum you're on. The fact that mainstream media is talking about it is significant. It's significant because, okay, I know this distraction theory. The reason I can't buy it is it doesn't seem like a very good one to keep, to use. It's so off the wall that most people...
It's quite a good one for millennials.
Do you think they care about it?
I don't think it's very good for Gen X and boomers. I think it's very good for...
I don't know many millennials. I think it's mostly Gen Xers and boomers that are interested in this. I don't know if there's many...
I'll get myself in trouble, but they don't know anything. So, I mean, millennials are so credulous. It's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. It's not because they're, mentally retarded or anything. It's just that they've been retarded by the system they've gone through and the world that they've grown up in. It's our fault mainly, but
maybe. But I think if this were just if there weren't personal experiences that back up what's going on out there, I would probably be more open to the distraction theory. The fact is, I know too many people, and I've had too many of my own, and I've had too many cases. We've had cases of alien abduction that have been really interesting. I can't get into those, but I mean, look. There's too many things that point to something going on to just say, oh, this is just a government distraction. Because, I mean, I can tell you right now, that thing I saw with the meteorologist was not a government distraction.
I don't know if anybody would want to or not, but on my TikTok channel that I have for my paranormal group, I have a video where I'm at a restaurant in the local town, and you can see this light moving across, and it's not making any noise.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the whole time, that's not an airplane because it doesn't look like one because they have certain colors. And the interesting thing is, as I'm following this, I see an airplane show up over here. So I can literally compare the two side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And as I pan over to this one to see the airplane, this one over here vanishes.
Interesting.
It just totally
it's on your it's on your
It's on my
Instagram?
TikTok. For curious things, investigations.
All right.
That's my TikTok, and you can find it on there.
I'll look it up and make sure all of you out there do as well. I think, I really think that the reality of this is that I don't want them to produce evidence so that I can believe that these are aliens. I want them to produce evidence so that I can stop speculating as to what it might be. Produce the evidence and just leave it at that. It's not about proving it to me. It's more about proving what it's not. You know what I mean? Rather than what it is. And I really think, to the credit of this entire show, this episode, it's very dangerous to classify these things as demons, for Christians to take that perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Very irresponsible.
On that point, I think we can agree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
all of us can agree on that.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem here is the lack of transparency is why that is an issue. Because when you don't have transparency, then people's imaginations run wild and lead to maybe even more dangerous conclusions. And
new converts to Christianity should take a great big pause before they start commenting on all things through the lens of Christianity.
Please, that's right. A very good point, and that's one that
like your vice president.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, he needs to keep his mouth shut. Every time he opens it, he sounds like a fool. All right, let's and see. I live in America. I can say that. Isn't that nice? All right, so
I'll probably get arrested later.
Yeah, you don't have constitutional protection. Not yet.
Yeah, you're my phone call.
You got it.
You better convert, Father. You better. All right. Next week, I think I said it wrong. It's not Open Lines, Open Topics. It's actually part 3 of your Catholic questions being answered. So that's next week. So that does continue this theological series.
Real Catholic answers.
Yeah, real Catholic answers. Yes, yes. I like that. It's the real one. So that's next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, June 9th. Okay, don't be sure not to miss it, particularly if you have seen the other ones. This leads in right where we left off. So that's, again, this Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Be there or you're just going to be left in the dark, right? And
the aliens will get you.
The aliens are going to get you. The demons are going to get you. The Antichrist is going to come, and you're going to be the first victim.
All of them are coming.
Until then, I'm going to see you out there in the ether. God bless everyone.
Good night, everybody.